Hi, automotive enthusiasts. Welcome to Boost Bureau, where today we dive into one of the most influential performance cars ever created, the 1973 Porsche 911 Carrera RS 2.7. This car has been called the lightweight legend, a machine that took Porsche from being a respected sports car maker to becoming a cultural icon with a global following. It was born not out of luxury marketing or boardroom ambition, but from the strict demands of racing regulations, rules that forced Porsche to rethink what a road car could be and to strip the 911 down to its very essence. What makes this car so fascinating is not just its raw numbers or its racing victories, but the way it reshaped expectations for performance cars everywhere. To understand the Carrera RS 2.7, we have to see it as a crossroads. On one side, the comfortable, stylish 911s that wealthy drivers wanted to park in their garages, and on the other, the relentless pressures of motorsport, where ounces mattered and winning meant survival. Caught between those two worlds, Porsche had to decide whether to play it safe or to gamble on something radical. And they gambled. The result was a car that looked familiar, but felt entirely different. A car that introduced the world to the ducktail spoiler, a word now inseparable from Porsche's legacy, a car that sounded and handled like nothing else on the road in its era. Yet, behind the legend is a story filled with doubt, risk, and unexpected triumphs. Porsche's own board was skeptical. Would anyone really buy a stripped-down, louder, harder-edged 911 when the brand was known for sophistication and daily drivability? Would they even be able to meet the 500-unit minimum production run demanded by racing authorities? These questions haunted the early planning stages, making the RS 2.7 not just a car, but a test of Porsche's identity. Today, collectors fight for the privilege of owning one, and prices soar into the millions. But back in 1973, it wasn't obvious that this car would succeed. That tension, the mix of hesitation and boldness, of regulation and inspiration, is what makes the RS story so gripping. Over the course of this video, we'll uncover how the RS 2.7 was born, how it transformed both racing and road cars, and how its DNA continues to shape every 911 that followed. We'll explore the decisions that made it possible, the engineering that pushed boundaries, and the legacy that still reverberates 50 years later. By the end, you'll see why this isn't just another old Porsche. It's the moment when Porsche proved that lightness, focus, and courage could change the course of automotive history. So buckle in, because the story of the 1973 Carrera RS 2.7 is more than a legend. It's a revolution on four wheels. The story of the 1973 Porsche 911 Carrera RS 2.7 begins long before its debut, in a moment when Porsche's racing ambitions clashed with the cold realities of homologation rules. To compete in the Group 4 racing class, Porsche needed to build at least 500 road-going cars that shared the DNA of their competition machines. That figure wasn't just a bureaucratic hurdle, it was a lifeline. Without those cars, Porsche would be locked out of a critical racing category where prestige and innovation were on full display. This raised a pressing question. Could the brand, known for its blend of comfort and performance, convince enough buyers to embrace a stripped-down 911 that prioritized speed over refinement? That question set the foundation for the RS 2.7, a car that would challenge expectations and force Porsche to redefine its identity. Micro story: the weight obsession. Porsche's engineers knew that every kilogram mattered. They went to extreme lengths to trim the car down, from using thinner gauge steel for the body panels to lightweight glass for the windows. Sound insulation, carpeting, even door handles. If it wasn't essential to driving, it was either thinned out or removed. This philosophy wasn't just about meeting numbers, it was about changing the way the car felt in a driver's hands. The result was a machine that came alive with every input, sharper and more responsive than anything Porsche had sold before. Yet, there was risk. Customers accustomed to plush interiors might find this level of austerity shocking, and Porsche's sales team worried that enthusiasm for a bare-bones 911 might fall flat. Context Digest: the market in 1973. The early 1970s were turbulent years for sports cars. Rising insurance premiums, looming emissions regulations, and fuel crises made the market less friendly to high-performance vehicles. Luxury and comfort were becoming selling points, while rawness was increasingly rare. For Porsche to double down on lightness and track focus was not just bold, it was contrarian. That choice magnified the stakes for the RS program, because if it failed, it could weaken Porsche's standing at a fragile moment in the global auto industry. Micro story. The ducktail surprise. Among the most striking features of the RS 2.7 was its rear spoiler, nicknamed the ducktail. It wasn't added for flair but for necessity. At high speeds, early 911s suffered from aerodynamic lift that made them unstable, especially in racing. The ducktail reduced that lift, improving stability and grip. This marked the first time a production road car featured a factory-installed aerodynamic aid, setting a precedent that would ripple through the industry. But it was a gamble. Would customers embrace a road car that wore such a conspicuous racing-inspired accessory? The answer would become clear when the first cars hit the streets and tracks. Reflection bridge. The RS wasn't simply a lighter, faster 911. It was the embodiment of Porsche's willingness to experiment with ideas that could easily have been seen as too radical. That spirit of experimentation carried into how the car was marketed and sold. Context digest, homologation pressure. Porsche needed 500 units approved to homologate the RS for racing, but internal voices doubted they could sell that many. The plan was conservative. Build just enough to satisfy regulations and stop there. But when orders opened, demand began to exceed expectations, challenging the narrative that buyers wanted comfort over purity. The surprise success revealed an untapped appetite for cars that delivered an unfiltered driving experience, even at the cost of convenience. Micro story. Life on the track. The RS 2.7 wasn't designed as a garage queen. It was meant to dominate competition. Early test outings revealed a car that could carry immense speed through corners, with agility that stunned drivers used to heavier machines. It wasn't the most powerful car in its class, but its balance and braking precision gave it an edge. Porsche had unlocked a formula that showed outright horsepower wasn't everything. A lighter, better balanced car could punch far above its weight. This philosophy would become a cornerstone of Porsche's motorsport success for decades to come. Reflection bridge. The success of the RS 2.7 on the track began to validate its daring design on the road, bridging the gap between skeptical buyers and passionate enthusiasts. What had started as a compliance exercise was rapidly becoming a symbol of something bigger. Micro story. The road car appeal. For customers who did take delivery of an RS 2.7, the experience was transformative. On a winding road, the lightweight build and tuned suspension translated into direct, visceral feedback. The car wasn't easy, it demanded focus. But for those who embraced it, the RS felt alive in a way few road cars ever had. This was Porsche, offering not just a product, but a raw connection between driver and machine. That bond helped create lifelong loyalty, turning ordinary buyers into passionate evangelists for the Porsche brand. Context digest. Sales momentum. Initial plans for just 500 cars were quickly abandoned as orders surged. By the time production ended, over 1,500 RS 2.7s had been built, far exceeding expectations. This success silenced doubters within Porsche and proved that enthusiasts were willing to pay for performance, even if it came with compromises in comfort. The RS had not only secured Porsche's place in Group 4 racing, but it also created a halo effect that elevated the entire 911 lineup. The Carrera RS 2.7 had transitioned from a necessary homologation project to a cult icon almost overnight, but its impact didn't stop at sales or even immediate racing victories. What came next would reshape Porsche's future and cement the RS as one of the most important cars of the 20th century, leading directly into its broader cultural and technological legacy. As the 1973 Porsche 911 Carrera RS 2.7 gained traction, both literally on the track and figuratively in the marketplace, its significance began to expand beyond Porsche's immediate goals. What started as a compliance car evolved into a cultural marker that resonated far beyond Europe. The RS wasn't simply a machine, it was a statement about what performance could mean in an era when regulations and market forces seemed intent on taming it. Microstory. A global shockwave. In the United States, where tightening emission standards and insurance crackdowns were already squeezing the life out of muscle cars, the RS 2.7 appeared almost otherworldly. American enthusiasts, used to big displacement brute force, encountered a car that relied on lightness, agility, and clever engineering rather than sheer cubic inches. For those lucky enough to import or experience one, it redefined what driving pleasure could mean. This contrast amplified the RS's mystique, turning it into a touchstone for a new philosophy of performance. Context Digest: Porsche's racing triumphs. On the track, the RS quickly proved its worth. Victories in endurance races like the Targa Florio and dominance in various GT categories cemented its reputation. These wins weren't just trophies. They validated the car's engineering to a skeptical public. Racing was Porsche's laboratory, and the RS showed that the lessons learned on the circuit could directly benefit road cars. This synergy of competition and consumer value gave Porsche a unique credibility in an increasingly crowded sports car market. Microstory: the collector's spark. Almost immediately, whispers began in collector circles that the RS 2.7 would be special. Unlike many homologation specials that faded after their racing careers, the RS held on to its aura. Its limited production numbers, unique features, and undeniable racing pedigree combined to make it a target for enthusiasts who saw cars as more than transportation. That early recognition planted the seeds of the extraordinary valuations we see today, where RS 2.7s fetch millions at auction. Reflection bridge. What's striking is how quickly the RS 2.7 transcended its functional role and became a symbol, not just for Porsche, but for the entire sports car genre. This transformation raises a deeper question. Why did this particular car resonate so powerfully when so many others did not? Microstory. The engineering philosophy. The RS embodied a principle that continues to define Porsche. Adding power is easy, but reducing weight while preserving usability is an art. This balance between performance and practicality set the RS apart. It could be driven to the grocery store and then taken to a racetrack the same afternoon. This dual-purpose nature wasn't common in 1973, making the RS not only exciting but also revolutionary. The car's philosophy became the template for Porsche's later GT models, a lineage that carries the same spirit into the modern era. Context Digest: Competition landscape. Porsche wasn't alone in the homologation game. Brands like Ferrari, BMW, and Ford had their own special projects, but few struck the same balance. Some cars were too compromised for road use, while others diluted their racing DNA to appeal to mass buyers. The RS 2.7 walked the tightrope better than most, blending innovation with accessibility. This placed Porsche in a league of its own, reinforcing its identity as a maker of drivers' cars, not just prestige machines. Microstory: customer stories. Beyond the factory narrative, real-world owners of the RS helped build its legend. Reports circulated of enthusiasts driving their RS 2.7s across Europe, tackling mountain passes, then stripping them down for weekend races. These stories added authenticity to Porsche's marketing claims, showing the car wasn't just capable, in theory but in practice. Every owner became a storyteller, feeding into the mythos that the RS wasn't just a car, it was an experience. Reflection bridge. As the RS carved out its identity, it also set in motion a ripple effect that would influence not only Porsche's future lineup, but also the wider sports car world. Its impact was not confined to the 1970s. It cast a long shadow over decades of automotive design. Context Digest: the legacy builds. By the end of the 1970s, the RS had already achieved cult status. Journalists, racers, and collectors alike pointed to it as a turning point. For Porsche, it became a reference point every time a new high-performance 911 was developed. From the 911 Turbo to the modern GT3 RS, echoes of the 1973 RS's philosophy remain unmistakable. This continuity gave the RS a living legacy rather than a frozen moment in time. Microstory: the price of purity. Over time, the market began to recognize the RS 2.7 not just as a great car, but as an irreplaceable artifact. Collectors drove prices upward, and what once was a car for committed enthusiasts became, ironically, too valuable to risk on a racetrack. This tension between its original purpose as a no-compromise driver's tool and its modern role as a cherished investment reflects the irony of automotive history. The more a car succeeds at being pure, the rarer and more untouchable it becomes. The RS 2.7 had cemented itself as both a product of necessity and a beacon of innovation. But its story didn't end there. What followed was the broader cultural and technological ripple effect that ensured the RS would never fade into obscurity, carrying its DNA across generations of Porsche road and race cars while inspiring competitors worldwide. The enduring power of the 1973 Porsche 911 Carrera RS 2.7 lies not just in its period triumphs, but in the way it permanently reshaped Porsche's philosophy and the broader automotive landscape. What began as a solution to a racing rule became a cultural reference point for purity, lightness, and driver engagement, values that echo in sports cars to this day. Microstory, the lineage of influence. Every time Porsche has released a new track-focused 911, from the 964 RS to the 996 GT3 and beyond, comparisons are made to the original RS 2.7. Engineers openly admit that its philosophy continues to guide development. Chase balance before brute power, connection before comfort. The RS 2.7 set the tone for Porsche's most celebrated subline, ensuring that even as technology advanced, the spirit of simplicity and sharpness would remain a North Star. Context Digest, shaping a brand. Before the RS, Porsche was respected. But after the RS, Porsche became aspirational in a deeper sense. The car's success gave the brand confidence to push harder into motorsport-derived road cars, making the 911 more than a stylish sports coupe. It became the ultimate driver's benchmark. This wasn't just a product shift. It was a brand transformation, one that attracted a global audience of enthusiasts who associated Porsche with uncompromised driving pleasure. Microstory, the collector phenomenon. By the 1990s, RS 2.7s were no longer just used sports cars. They were coveted pieces of history. Auction houses began showcasing them as centerpiece lots, and values climbed steadily. This surge revealed how deeply the RS had captured imaginations, transcending its role as a machine and becoming an icon of engineering philosophy. Unlike some cars that become collectible for rarity alone, the RS carried both scarcity and substance, a combination that made it nearly untouchable. Reflection bridge. As decades passed, the RS 2.7's story grew richer, not dimmer. Its legend didn't fossilize. It continued to evolve with each generation that rediscovered its impact. Microstory. Inspiration beyond Porsche. The RS's ethos wasn't confined to Stuttgart. Automakers around the world took notice. The idea that lightness and balance could outperform raw power influenced cars as diverse as the Mazda MX-5 Miata and Lotus Elise. Even manufacturers of heavier, more luxurious sports cars began to pay lip service to the RS philosophy, acknowledging that agility was as valuable as horsepower. The RS had sparked a global rethinking of performance priorities. Context Digest, cultural symbolism. Over time, the RS became more than a car. It became a cultural shorthand for authenticity. In films, magazines, and enthusiast lore, the "oh boy" sight of a ducktail spoiler instantly conveyed seriousness and heritage. It represented a rejection of excess, even as the automotive world layered on more weight and technology. For younger enthusiasts who never lived through the 1970s, the RS became a gateway into Porsche mythology, a reminder of when things were raw, mechanical, and pure. Microstory, modern reunions. In recent years, Porsche has celebrated the RS with anniversary editions, museum exhibitions, and track events that bring surviving examples together. These gatherings highlight not just the beauty of the cars, but the devotion of their owners. Seeing dozens of RS 2.7s lined up today is a visual reminder of how a small homologation project has grown into a global movement. The reverence is palpable, and it underscores the RS's status as more than just a machine. It's a shared memory. Reflection bridge. What began as a risky experiment to meet racing regulations had grown into a story that continues to inspire passion, loyalty, and innovation half a century later. Its ripple effects prove that sometimes the most constrained projects produce the most enduring breakthroughs. Context, digest, enduring philosophy. The RS 2.7 remains relevant not because it was the fastest or the rarest, but because it captured a truth about driving that transcends eras: less weight, more feel, deeper connection. This principle has guided not only Porsche's most beloved models, but also the expectations of enthusiasts worldwide. It's why the RS still resonates in a world where cars are heavier, quieter, and more insulated than ever. Microstory. Legacy on the track. Even modern Porsche race cars carry traces of the RS spirit. The GT3 RSR and 911 RSR, machines competing at Le Mans and beyond, are spiritual descendants of the 2.7. Their designers continually reference the lessons learned in 1973, proving that the RS wasn't just a moment in time, but a foundation stone of Porsche's racing identity. The car didn't just win races. It rewrote the playbook for how Porsche would approach motorsport forever. The 1973 Carrera RS 2.7 story is ultimately about transformation, of a company, of a philosophy, and of the way enthusiasts understand performance. It's a reminder that greatness often comes not from abundance, but from restraint. As we look at the sprawling Porsche lineup today, with its SUVs, hybrids, and electrics, the RS 2.7 stands as a beacon of purity, reminding the brand and its followers where the soul of Porsche truly lies. The 1973 Porsche 911 Carrera RS 2.7 stands as one of the rare moments in automotive history when regulation, innovation, and passion collided to create something timeless. It wasn't just a car that satisfied racing authorities. It was a car that satisfied the dreams of drivers who longed for a machine that felt alive beneath them. The RS was proof that Porsche could gamble on purity and win, setting the company on a path that would shape its reputation for generations. Its influence is visible in every lightweight, track-oriented 911 that has followed, and its ducktail spoiler has become a universal symbol of racing pedigree. The RS's story also reminds us of an irony. A car born as a practical necessity has become an unattainable legend, locked away in collections where its true purpose, spirited driving, is too often sacrificed to its value. Yet even as many sit preserved in climate-controlled garages, the legacy of the RS continues to breathe in every corner of Porsche's lineup, in every GT model that carries its DNA, and in every enthusiast who values connection over excess. More than half a century later, it still answers the question posed back in 1973. Could drivers love a car that sacrificed comfort for feel, luxury for lightness, and quietness for truth? The answer is clear in the reverence it receives today. For those who study it, the RS is not only a car but a lesson. That greatness is rarely about compromise and often about daring to be different. It changed Porsche, and it changed the way we define what a driver's car should be. Thanks for riding with us on Boost Bureau. See you next time, automotive enthusiasts.